Welcome back. This is Sunday edition. Many thanks for joining us or staying with us. Let's now take a look at the political pages, some of the top political headlines very quickly. Let's go through them again. My guest, can just introduce them again. Richard Kavemba, Jubilee strategist. With me, Gabriel Chapia Bukachi, who is running to become the Senator of Nairobi on an ODM ticket. There's a whole story on that. We shall be coming to that later on. I have with me Dr. Gideon Muliungi, who is the Wiper Party parliamentary nominee for Mwingi Central, and Dismas Mokua, political risk analyst. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
All right, very quickly, let's start with the Sunday Standard. A lot of political stories. Let's start with what's happening at the IEBC. IEBC, that is on page 10 of the Sunday Standard. IEBC dilemmas, credibility, fears, jolt preparations. That is after the Public Procurement Administrative Board cancelled the 2.5 billion tender for printing ballot papers, again derailing the electioneering process. Dismas, what is your take on this?
Well, we know for the longest time there are a number of staffers at the IEBC. When they're appointed to these positions, their major interest is actually not to deliver a free and fair and credible elections. Like during the last election, it was very surprising that a number of the commissioners actually started their own companies, and they were the principal suppliers to the organization. And this case here is a very good indicator of the commercial infights at IEBC, that while the entire nation is looking at having a free, fair and credible election.
At the commission itself?
At the commission, obviously, the commission itself, right. And obviously outsiders, for them they're interested in making money from every process which takes place in this nation. Whether it's the food crisis, whether there is a water crisis, anything else, people are interested in making a quick buck. However, again, there's a provision for single sourcing for this kind of an operation. Mm-hmm. So nobody should be worried today that we are not going to have an election because of a failure to get ballots. But I think moving forward, we need to lift the veil of incorporation and understand who are these people, who are the architects of these commercial fights within IEBC, and are they linked to the political party leadership in Kenya? Are they linked to Jubilee? Are they linked to NASA? So that we can actually get to know those personalities. Mm-hmm. Because a number of those costs are really highly inflated, and you cannot fail to see. Like, for instance, during the last election, part of the reason why there was a logistical breakdown is that one of the commissioners had awarded himself a tender, obviously using a dotted line, mm-hmm. to supply transport services. Right. So when one of the commissioners is supplying transport services to the organization and something goes wrong, I doubt whether a junior officer can look up at the commissioner and say, excuse me, sir, your company has failed to deliver. Right. And I think moving forward, really, as a nation, we should start treating elections as something which is almost holy, so that even if you want to make a buck from IEBC, make it in a manner which is very transparent, right, that does not compromise the nation.
Dr. do you think this raises any credibility issues over the election, or is it just an administrative hitch?
In my view, I think this could be another chicken gate scandal in the kitchen, mm-hmm. cooking. And I want to agree with the Appeals Board, Procurement Review Board, for coming in handy to stop this. Because in every procurement process, it must be free and transparent.
All right.
And if this is not checked, as my colleague here said, if this is not checked, then people are going to make money. Right. Politicians and all, and the staff, the IEBC.
Are there any fears, Chapia, of this delaying the election in any way? What is your take on this?
There is probability, mm-hmm. of we might not have those fears for delaying elections, because the IEBC can do what we call direct procurement because of time, mm-hmm. or government to government. But this is a process that is not supposed to be done direct because of the several stakeholders involved. So if they do direct procurement, it means the political parties will be left out and the other stakeholders will be left out. But because of time, I think now they can approach that way. But it will be open whether it will be done direct procurement involving all the political parties. Another thing also the IEBC are supposed to do in future, because all the time throughout during the election, we have scandals to do with the procurement with IEBC. The latest one was the Chicken Gate scandal. Now we have this scandal, and maybe in 2022 we'll have another scandal. So in future, if the laws can be changed, that procurement not to be done, the IEBC to do just logistics, but the procurement of all material to be used in election should be done with maybe the power, the body that is accredited by the government without any interest.
All right. There's a, Richard, there's a paragraph here. From rogue political class, conspiratorial parliament, disorganized political parties, a conniving population, indifferent civil society, to a mistrusted electoral commission. It's a familiar story of hope against the odds. Those are the words of my colleague Nzao Musau. Does that represent the state of affairs?
Yeah, it's really bad. Actually, that really represents it, because it's a cancer that is eating into our society. And this, honestly, is really not just about the election. This is about entrepreneurship. If you want to look at it more honestly, it's about people trying to play around with the procurement process to make crazy amounts of money that will end up not giving the Kenyan citizens value for their money. Because this is about exaggerating prices. It is not necessarily about manipulating the electoral process, but it is about making it unnecessarily expensive. So we need value for money. The most disappointing thing about these things is that the IEBC has a legal department, fully functional, that is paid by taxpayers' money, and you wonder where they are when some of these things happen. And the other thing is, I don't know whether the IEBC understands the role that it plays, because it is also about credibility. They should be like Caesar's wife, beyond reproach. And when we start seeing some of these funny games of people doing things to make money, then we wonder how different are they? Can we really entrust our electoral process with them? So as much as everybody in Kenya now wants to make money, it's important for the people who are managing some of these very sensitive institutions to know that there is more to what they are doing than just making an extra buck, that there is a responsibility load on ensuring that they are as much as possible beyond reproach. Yes.
All right, interesting story there. Of course, we will keep an eye on what's happening with that story. On page 21 of the Sunday Standard, there's a very interesting story coming out of Jubilee strongholds. That is the independent candidates. We have seen an unprecedented number of independent candidates in this election. Now, from the Jubilee strongholds, some of the key figures, of course, Peter Kenneth running for Nairobi governorship on as an independent candidate, Kinuthia Mbugua, the incumbent governor in Nakuru, as well as Bundotich Zedekiah Kiprop Bozeki in the county of Uasin Gishu, William Kabogo in Kiambu, and as well as senatorial and parliamentary candidates who are independent. Now they're saying, because they are supporting President Uhuru Kenyatta's re-election bid, they are telling the president and Jubilee not to endorse the Jubilee candidates in this election, because that is because they will be competing for this same slot. I don't know what's your take on this, Dismas.
Number one, Ben, we don't
is
have...
this doable?
The candidates who are meeting yesterday using the brand independent are actually not independent candidates, because you are supposed to be independent because of your ideology or your philosophy about a political party, which comes from the West. Maybe you could be on the left or you could be on the right, and not one political party represents your interest. And in Kenya, we've got a few cases. Like, for instance, we have Dr. Patrick Musimba, who right from the word go did not want to identify himself with any other political party. He said, I want to go to the National Assembly with an independent mind and pursue my interests as well as the interests of the voters back in Kibwezi. But for the people we saw meeting yesterday, the only reason why they're running as independent is because they've been jilted. They claim that the Jubilee primaries were not free and fair, and they were not credible, that they were actually kicked out. I would suspect, for instance, if Peter Ken had won the elections, he would be very happy in Jubilee. He wouldn't be having the conversation I was saying yesterday of putting up a suit which is, you mix and match and you go home a very happy man. So all of them are disappearing because they say the party primaries were not free and fair. And yesterday, Peter Ken indicated that voting in Nairobi was in fact circular, that one person would even vote as many as 10 times or 20 times. And from that conversation yesterday, it's very clear that they're forming something like a rebellion. They're not very happy with the status quo, but they know that they need President Kenyatta's brand for them to win. Because everybody yesterday was saying They're not even loyal to Jubilee political party. They are loyal to President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Meaning that in the event that any of them win these elections, when they go to the National Assembly or whichever seat they're running for, they're likely to pursue an independent position. And from yesterday's conversation, you can tell the happiest man is President Kenyatta, because he knows whatever happens, these guys are going to assist him get the vote. However, the deputy president should be a very worried man, because all of them again yesterday, if you could read the subtext in a very subtle manner, all of them blame their current state of affairs on the Deputy President Ruto, apart from Buzeki. It was actually very surprising that Buzeki was a part of that deal. But again, one would imagine that he wants to keep close tabs on what is happening with the Jubilee. I don't know whether they refer to as Jubilee in the opposition or a coalition of losers. But that's a warning shot to all political parties, that in future, if your party primaries are not going to be free and fair, if you frustrate any person like Gabriel has been frustrated here, then there's an opportunity for you to run as an independent. And it will be very interesting to see whether or not actually any of those independents.
They are calling themselves the Kenya Association of Independent Candidates, not the Coalition of Losers. Daktari, you clinched the Wiper ticket for Mwingi Central. What is your take on this independent candidates, most of whom, like Dismas says, just lost in the election, and their demands?
Yeah, I think as we have seen, the number of independents has skyrocketed. And in my view, this is a manifestation of the shambolic nature of the primaries. In many cases, they were not free and fair. And that's why...
Daktari, let me interrupt you a bit. We are having a bit of a problem with your microphone, but we'll work on it in a short while. We're talking about this story on page 21. It's on page 21 of the Sunday Standard about the independent candidates. I know you are very much, you have been involved in this issue of the nomination in ODM. What is your take on this, first of all?
My take on an independent candidate is very simple, that there is no proper laws to guide the independent candidates in this particular country. The law is a bit shallow, because you cannot be independent and the same times you are supporting the president, or the same times you are supporting NASA. When you are independent, it's supposed to be based on ideologies. That's number one. Number two, the independent candidates are not losers, because we had shambolic nomination across the board. For example, in Nairobi County, if I speak on the side of my party, ODM, we have several people who have gone independent, and they have gone to be independent candidates because of the shambolic nominations. So the independent candidates are not losers, where it is as a result of those shambolic nomination.
Right.
Then number two, yesterday our party leader, the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, said he will only support the candidates who are elected in NASA, and he will not support the independent candidate. I want to request him, the force behind the independent candidates, the candidates that were disgruntled in ODM, it's a very big force, and they are going to make changes. So I will kindly request my party leader to withdraw that statement, because the independent candidates, they are independent candidates because of the shambolic ways the nomination was done in Nairobi, and we know how they...
But as a party leader and as a principal of the National Super Alliance, shouldn't he drum up support for his party and coalition?
It is true, he will drum up support for his party if the nominations were genuine, or if the nominations were not shambolic. But for this case, the people who are independent, some of them won. Some of them were declared winners by returning officers. Some of them were declared winners by political parties, that ODM political parties tribunal. Some of them were declared winners by High Court, and they still don't have the certificates. So for such person, he has a right to go independent, but the party leader should support that person, because we don't want discrimination. We don't want to be discriminated in ODM by saying that the independent candidates are losers.
Then if you do that, what's the purpose of political parties?
The purpose of political parties is to ensure equality. And because there was no equality during the nomination, so the independent candidates in their own right, they won. Others were declared winners, but they don't have certificates. So we are urging our party leader, we are all going to support him, whether independent or with any NASA affiliate parties. And we are both equal until when the government or when this particular republic will come up with the clear laws on ideologies of independent candidates. So I am supporting independent candidates like in Dagoretti North. The loser, one of the losers in ODM nomination, Babadola, he won. But because of the shambolic election that took place, Babadola was not able to be given the certificate.
All right.
And now he has gone independent. So for such kind of a person, you cannot say you will not support him, and the people want him on the ground.
Richard, what is your take on this? Where does this conundrum leave the political parties and the leaders in those parties?
There are several issues that come up on that matter. First, I would want to address the issue you first raised, that is on that story, that the independents that are aligned, it is interesting that there are independents that are Jubilee aligned and there are independents that are NASA aligned. That's why we are questioning this independence.
Right.
But I want to first talk about those who are Jubilee aligned, appealing to the president not to support the Jubilee party candidate, yet he is the Jubilee party leader. I think that is unfair. Let's first start there. You see, there are several issues. First, they have a right to run as independents. That one is not questionable. Their right to start demanding on how parties should conduct their campaigns is what I'm going to question. Because they're independent. Let them focus on their campaigns. Because let me put it this way. Let's assume it's a family. And it's a monogamous family. Political party, Jubilee party. That we want to settle down. And we have seats that need one person per each. And our party leader is the president. Already him and the deputy are given. Then we decide you're the governor, I am the senator. And then there are people who also were interested in this. Like for instance, if when you want to settle down, of course, you have several people you're dealing with, like ladies, 2 or 3.
Right.
Then you settle down on one. And one of the others decide that for one reason or the other, irrespective of whether you settle down or not, they'll still follow you. Can they start making demands that you have to be spending every night in their place, or you share and you settle down? And that is how I'm putting it. That there is a political family called the Jubilee family. It has a presidential candidate, it has governors, senators, women rep, National Assembly, and it is very unfair for anybody to come and tell the head of that family not to campaign for their own people.
The Murang'a Senator, Kembe Gitura, has said that it is infringing on the rights of those independent candidates for the president and Jubilee to support.
No. It is actually them who want to infringe on the rights of the president to be an effective party leader. The president, as a lead party, which is called Jubilee, incidentally, all of them were in that party. And this matter would not have arisen if they were the party candidates. But now they want to be unfair. It's like we go to, normally when we're going for Olympics, for instance, we normally have the national trials. I frequent them when they are at Nyayo Stadium here. And we now choose, like, in Kenya last time, we had more than 117 Kenyans who had Olympic qualifying time. And you need to note there are countries that didn't have any. And we only needed 3. So we got the best 3. If any of these other guys decide to become a Bahrainian and go and compete, will I follow him because I love him that much? I love Kenya more than any person.
Right.
So in this case, it is our parties.
Right.
We are loyal to our parties, and parties had a competition that was not perfect, but it produced winners.
Let me come to Daktari before I go to Dismas. All right.
Allow me to make a point. The political party leaders in Kenya, that's President Kenyatta or Raila Odinga and the other political party leaders in Kenya, have got a primary responsibility of ensuring that the party primaries are free and fair. President Kenyatta has got the sole responsibility of ensuring, and the buck stops with him, that the Jubilee parties or the party primaries are free and fair. So if the Jubilee party primaries are not free and fair, and a strong candidate gets kicked out of the process, not because of his own fault, but because the party has not been able to conduct the polls in a free and fair manner, and he runs as an independent, you cannot blame him for that mischief. If there's somebody in ODM, like he says, Babadola, who wanted to participate in a political party primary, which was supposed to be free and fair, and because of poor organization, right from the top leadership, is kicked out, he can run as an independent and is supposed to be given that opportunity. But if you get somebody jumping out of Jubilee because of his own fault, then in that case, you would say that there's a mistake. But a number of these guys who have jumped out of the NASA parties as well as Jubilee, it's not because of their own fault. It's because of the party's inability to hold a free and fair party primary. So in that case, you cannot start blaming them. And I think moving forward, the two political leaders, that's President Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, should entertain independence as much as possible, because these guys are moved out. Not because they, like for instance, if you look at Murang'a, or maybe even you look at the Peter Ken situation in Nairobi, he said there was circular voting in Nairobi. So he probably thinks that if the party primary was free and fair, he would have won. Give him the opportunity to go and vote, or rather to go and run. And the president or NASA should not decampaign those candidates. I think
but everybody would say they lost unfairly. Nobody would say they lost fairly. Don't you think it infringes on the rights of the people who if whether the nominations were free and fair? I mean, that has passed. That's debatable, and it really has passed. Do you think it's fair for those people with the tickets now?
Well, there's a big issue there. Like, for instance, when we were going to these parties, initially, the members of all political parties were told this is going to be a closed primary, that the only people to participate in this election are party members. Like for the case of Murang'a and Nairobi, that it's only party members, that your name must be in the party list for you to vote. But on the material day, all you needed was to be in the IBC register of 2013 to go and vote, meaning that it was an open primary and every Tom, Dick and Harry could come and vote. So for me, if I'm a strong candidate in Jubilee, and I've told my guys to come and cast the ballot in my favor, and then my competition, who is a mischievous man, tells his supporters to come and vote 10 times. Why am I supposed to take the liability? Well, in fact, it's supposed to be the party leadership to ensure that it's supposed to be a closed primary. I think really, as a nation, we should now start sanitizing this thing and say, if we are unable to hold free and fair party primaries, then let's give the political leadership the opportunity to go to an exclusive club and say, for Nairobi, we are going to have these people running, and then pick them the way it happens in the UK.
Your microphone has been sorted out. You are part of this just past nominations. What is your take on this?
Yes, I was part of this process, and then when you go to an election, every candidate expects to win the election. And if you lose, you must look at where you are going to go. And many people do not want to accept defeat. But in every game, there is a loser. And as I said, the growing number of these independent candidates, which was not witnessed in the last general elections. One of them is because of the shambolic nature of the primaries, especially in the Jubilee strongholds, where we have seen a lot of independents, and they've even teamed up to form Independent Candidates Association, which I saw yesterday was being called the independence of losers. So in a political party is like a business. You go into a political business to make profits.
Right.
And the profits you are making is the number of members of parliament
that you've harvested.
Which you harvest.
We've seen this with ODM and Jubilee. Do we have this in Wiper? This issue of independence.
Wiper, they are there, but they are not many. Musila is independent, our former chairman. There are not many. There are not as many as in Jubilee.
Of course, because also in Wiper are not as many.
Because Wiper primaries were free and very transparent. That's why there are not many.
Ben, just something. I don't agree with that. Doctor, you are being limited with the truth. It was not fair. We still have even the case of Wavinya here in Machakos scandal and Kiala.
But it was repeated.
And it was repeated, and the second one was now, in fact, more worse than the first one. But if I come to the question, Ben, we were discussing of the political parties, the political laws states that all the voters who are supposed to participate in a nomination must be members of that political party. So all the political parties across, they broke the law.
Because of time,
if we go to court,
you have a point. But if you've decided there's no reprieve for you in the courts and whatever, and you decided to go as an independent. Yes. You're an independent. Why do you need Raila Odinga?
You are an independent due to the failure of the party to organize credible
You're going back.
So
but moving forward, you're an independent.
You are an independent candidate.
Why don't you campaign for yourself with your own resources and your own political capital? Because you're an independent candidate.
I think that is true. Right. You are independent and you are supposed to remain independent. But for this case, our independent candidates, they are still associating themselves with the political parties. Sure. So that is where now we need to come up with the clear laws to guide.
So that when you are we are mixing issues here. Yes. First, nobody is blaming these people for going independent for whatever reasons. Even those who participated, you need to understand that I participated and I lost to Sakaja. And I conceded defeat and I congratulated him. Not that I have not gone through this. If it is the same one in Jubilee, in Nairobi, others are calling what they are calling. It is never perfect. That is why even the last general election conducted by IEBC ended up at the Supreme Court. These electoral contests are always there. So it is not about, first, let's be clear, they have a right to run as independent. That's why the law allows them. So nobody is questioning that. We only have an issue here when they start making demands on how political parties should campaign for their candidates and not how to. So that's the issue here.
Yes.
Not
Very
their right
now,
to contest.
To the next issue, Dismas. Will, for example, these Jubilee-affiliated independents, will Uhuru Kenyatta really need them? The other ones that are affiliated to ODM, can they spoil the party for the presidential candidates?
I think right now maybe we need to identify their selfish interests. Right now for, say, the Jubilee candidates who met yesterday in the name of independence at Kasarani, what is President Kenyatta's number one interest today? Is to become, or rather retain his position as the President of the Republic of Kenya. Right. After he retains that position, then he may be interested to find out who has the majority in the National Assembly, who has majority in the Senate, then county assemblies, as well as governors. So if you look at their selfish interests, number one, they don't care whether or not these independents are around the town. They wouldn't want to dismiss them. Because, like, for instance, if you take somebody like Kavogo, I would imagine, in as much as Jubilee says was beaten in Kiambu, he must be having at least 100,000 loyal supporters who on August 8th will wake up early in the morning to go and vote because of Kavogo. And if Kavogo is not in the ballots, there is a chance that they'll not go out. They'll not wake up in the morning to go and cast the ballots. For Peter Ken, who got about 60,000 votes, one would assume that out of that, there may be 30,000 people who are so loyal to him that if he's not in the ballot, they will not go and vote. So it serves President Kenyatta's selfish interest to allow Peter Ken to campaign in Nairobi and for President Kenyatta not to decampaign Peter Ken, so that at least he can get the loyal voters to Peter Ken to come and cast the ballots. Yeah. Right. And looking at that issue, we cannot start telling the independents not to make demands. Kenya is a free nation. Anybody can go to the top of Mount Kenya and say, Mr. President Kenyatta, do this. If President Kenyatta thinks that the independents are making noise, then he only needs his one rally at Uhuru Park and say, I want you to give me a 6-piece suit so that I don't want this mix and match. So anybody, even a madman in the village, can make demands. Exactly. And it's up to the President Kenyatta or Raila Odinga then to give a feedback. But we cannot start saying that since you are independent, we tell them now, wait a minute, you don't have your freedom of speech.
All right.
Yeah.
Daktari, do these independents have a chance, like the rest of Kabogo, Senator Musila and Kituyu? Do they have a chance of winning as independent candidates against these popular parties in their regions?
I think they do. They have a chance of winning. It depends on how they play their cards by correcting the mistakes they made when they lost. Coming back to whether the presidential candidates will benefit from the independence,
yes.
I think it is true. The president will want everybody to campaign for them, including the independents and everybody else. The only thing that could give him sleepless nights is the number of political seats he will get. Because if all the independents were elected, then Jubilee Party will have no members in Parliament and in the Senate or NASA.
Right.
I think the president is happy that these independents are supporting him.
Of course, that brings the other issue of what will happen to these independents if they are elected. Obviously, they will be leaning to some side or the other. Do they have any chance of winning?
Yes. For this case of independent, Some of them, they do have chances. But if I look at it from the angle of the presidential candidate, for the independent and the party candidate, the presidential candidate will benefit. But when we come now to the numbers in Parliament or in the Senate, that is where we'll have the difference. And also the voting pattern of Kenyans has changed. Most Kenyans, they will not vote parties. Most Kenyans, they will vote individual. Compared from what happened from the recent party primaries, you find that some people who are well connected and are very close to the party leaders, they lost. But you find that the people who are not well connected, they have managed. So the independent candidate will win, and the voting pattern has changed. So the only problem is the numbers in Parliament or the Senate.
Richard, do you think the voting patterns have really changed that much?
No, I would be dishonest to say that ODM will not carry the day in Luo Nyanza, or Wiper will not have an upper hand in Lower Eastern. I don't think they've changed that much. But the truth of the matter is that even in the last election, there are patterns of dominance that were broken. I want to remind you of Migori. The current governor, Obado, is PDP. Yes. And there was an ODM. Candidate there. In Kisumu, there is Honorable Olago Oluoch. He lost the ODM, went to Fort Kenya, and won. And that happened across the country. And that is why in Nyeri, the immediate former governor who passed away was GNU. And the outgoing senator was NAC, the Ngilu NAC. Yes. So this pattern of breaking dominance has been there. For your information, in Machakos County, where I have settled, I'm from Makueni originally, but I've settled in Machakos, out of 8 members of parliament, Wiper had 3. So this dominance has been broken whenever the electorate probably feels that there was unfairness in the nominations. And now that is my appeal to them, that when Kenyans see that there was clear violation of somebody's right during the nomination, then those are the people you need to, that way, if you vote for such people, it will be a matter of time, and political leaders will learn their lessons that actually the electorate has learned to correct us whenever we go wrong, and to avoid the embarrassment and having Thank you very much. That is how to do it.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. That's why we leave it for this section of the program. Many thanks for staying with us. That has been Political Pages. When we return after this quick commercial break, we shall be taking a look at other issues, including the Nairobi senatorial ODM nomination row, if you can call it that. And Chape Chape will be giving us a dossier, some information. We'll be discussing that, of course, as well as taking a look at the candidates, at the list of candidates, both from the political parties and independent, that has been released by the IEBC. Don't go too far. This is Sunday edition.
This is KTN News.
The countdown is on. Kenya's debt with destiny is drawing close. Just what will decide the August election?
Hii siasa tuseme hapa kuna kitu ambayo inaendelea ndani yake.
This Monday, KTN News begins a countrywide conversation on the big issues.
You will only dig these tunnels of death over my dead body.
Kenya has been ranked as the third most improved country globally.
The big races.
The will of the people of Busia is going to be respected at all costs.
We suspect they gave out the ballot papers at night.
And all the big questions.
Tumeenda, jina langu waliko kwa ballot na ni watu ambao kuna membership.
I would want really to be briefed on what they have done so far because we are not inside there.
I mean, it's a contradiction.
Join Yvonne Okwara, Zubeda Kome, Ben Kitili, Joe Ageo, and KTN News correspondents across the country.
Here in Narok Town,
for the first edition of Kivumbi 2017, as they discuss the rising cost of living.
Ati walilima eka milioni moja huko Galana. Hatujui hiyo mahindi ilienda wapi.
Kivumbi 2017, where the people, the pundits, and the politicians meet. Live this Monday from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m.
This is KTN News.